Good afternoon, my friends. This is Paul, and today I'm going to be reviewing What Remains of Edith Finch for the Nintendo Switch. That sounds so creepy when I read it like that. I mean, that's the title they chose to give the game, so their fault, not mine. I initially wanted to do a really funny skit at the beginning of this video where I was typing out my script for this review, just like how Edith starts the game writing in her journal to an unknown somebody, but every time I tried to press the space bar, it would ask me, do you want to record this video? And so it just felt a little bit too unnatural. I didn't feel like writing in an actual journal. So I decided I'll just tell you guys now so that you can say, oh, Paul humor. Okay, nice to know that you're not always so overly critical all the time. So, as you probably guessed, most of What Remains of Edith is a walking simulator where the character sort of narrates her story in the past tense of what happened and why she's the only person in this environment and there's like no one else around. And while that may be what it seems like at first, it eventually gives you the options to view the story from other people's perspective. And without trying to spoil too much, because I feel like even saying this much is a disservice to the game itself, every time you switch to a new perspective, it actually slightly changes the way you play the game. So rather than something boring like drowning, where all you're doing is walking, sometimes you'll have different ways that the story presents itself to you. These were always a joy to see how many different ways they could mix up the walking simulator genre. And so I would say that the methods of storytelling were certainly innovative and amazing, and I could see why major publications would probably give this game 9s out of 10s and 10s out of 10s, because this is a masterpiece in storytelling. We must pursue this kind of art in the future. Yeah, well, unfortunately, the art of storytelling is pretty much the only charm you're going to get out of this, because the actual story itself is really, really weird. Just like in the case of Gone Home, the story is kind of told all over the place. Like, you have to piece together bits of information that you have in order to come to a conclusion about what exactly happened. And maybe it's just because my brain isn't all that intuitive, but I found that there were a lot of things left unanswered and you had to sort of figure it out for yourself. And I prefer stories that have a more conclusive, definitive ending. So maybe this type of game isn't for me. But I'd like to think that you're given enough clues where I think you could probably fill in the blanks on your own if you're that type of person. Now, the controls for this game are relatively simple. You move around with the left stick, control the camera with the right stick, and you use the ZR or ZR if you're a Canadian button to interact with the environment. Sometimes you use that in conjunction with the sticks to use other types of methods, and depending on the context of the story, sometimes these were a bit annoying at first, because it's like if you want to open a door, you have to push the stick forward, and it's like, why couldn't they just automatically animate the door being opened? But it becomes second nature the more the game progresses. A lot of times the clues are very easy to spot because there's a very conspicuous white dot among anything that you can interact with. And you can even choose to turn on a targeting reticle, but I found that that made the game feel like it had too much clutter, so I decided to turn it off. A lot of the environments are really beautiful. Everything that exists is so detailed. Like, they didn't really do a whole lot of cutting corners here. Like, I feel like if they wanted an environment to seem authentic, the creators did everything in their power to make sure that such an intent was preserved. The voice acting is really, really incredible, and overall the design of the game is not really that hard. Sure, there are a couple of puzzles, very, very loosely, I might add. They hardly ever feel frustrating. At no point in the game did I ever feel like I needed a guide. Sometimes the game had a way of holding your hand without holding your hand, and I definitely wish more games would adopt this formula. Like, I really don't want to give away how they do it, but they had subtle ways of guiding you to the next objective without outright having an arrow on the screen pointing you in the right direction. Now, this game doesn't have a whole lot of replay value because it's a fairly linear story. Only on, I think, 2 occasions did I ever encounter branching pathways. So you're pretty much reading this like a book. However, once you finish the main story, you have the option to replay individual moments of the story in whatever order you want, presumably if you want to, I guess, fill in the blanks if the main story didn't do it good enough for you, which that's a pretty cool move. I wish more narrative driven stories would allow you to just jump straight to particular narratives. Professor Layton versus Phoenix Wright could learn a few things from that. Instead of making me start like 12 different files just to do a walkthrough, I could just skip right to the best scenes in the game. The music is also really great. The sound effects really help you feel immersive, and the camera angles do a great job of giving perspective. Like when you switch to a character that's shorter, you're gonna feel like everything is huge. So that perspective shift is really welcomed, especially in a game that's pretty much entirely first-person adventure. Overall, What Remains of Edith Finch is not going to be a very satisfying game for people that don't really like visual novels, and it's probably going to be even less appealing if you don't like walking simulators. However, if you're looking for an interesting way of telling a story, I think you're really going to like this game. However, I don't think you're going to like how it resolves, as it felt kind of like, that's it? Shouldn't there be more? So, I think that this is an interesting experiment, but I certainly hope this method can be perfected in the future, maybe with studios with bigger budgets. So with that, thank you very much for watching. I'm sorry if I left out a lot of information, but as you can probably imagine, this is the kind of game where less is more because it's so focused on the story. So if there's something you specifically want to know, if you're like, I don't care about spoilers, Paul, just let me know in the comments section. And until the next time, keep the faith, stay epic, God bless, and make sure that you give answers if you're trying to tell a story. Otherwise, I'm not going to like it. Bye.